Okay, so I don't normally post this kind of rambly talking head commentary content. There's other YouTubers who do that, but there's so much going on right now in the War Thunder community, I kind of felt compelled to put something together. A number of you have commented on my past videos and mentioned that I don't whine and complain as much as a lot of other gaming YouTubers, and I try really hard not to, but this is going to be a rare exception. In addition to some positive thoughts, projections, and constructive ideas, I do have a few gripes, but I really hope it doesn't come off as, like, whiny. Now, I've even got some ideas on making bombers relevant again at higher-tiered air battles, so if you're at all interested in jet bombers, please stick it out and finish the video, even though it's kind of long, because I have an ask for you at the end. Anyway, you guys can enjoy some dev server gameplay while I ramble for a bit. So first up, Gaijin announced yesterday, on the 19th, that they're adding Israel as a playable faction with a limited tech tree. The current buzz as of making this video is that it's going to be an aviation-only tech tree and start somewhere around rank 4 or 5. No idea how that's going to work out. Needless to say, this has gotten a lot of reactions from the community. Now, I have to give a little context here, but I promise this is going somewhere relevant. Recently, thanks to you guys, I managed to get myself into the Gaijin Content Creator Partner Program. A big thank you to all of you who've subscribed and watched my videos, because the views have been strong enough to get my foot in the door, and I've been able to get better content out faster as a result, like the dev server stuff I posted this week. That's all thanks to you guys. So, what does that have to do with Israel being added as a faction? Well, one of the other perks is that I got invited to the Content Creator Discord and have a direct feedback line of communication to the developers. I've submitted two things. First was a rather detailed proposal for the addition of the K-5 missile into War Thunder, along with suggestions on which aircraft should carry it and how it might be implemented and all that. And also, a proposal for a catch-all faction, maybe called Rest of the World or something, to include vehicles from nations like Argentina, Yugoslavia, India, or Israel, who have produced some domestic hardware over the years, but not really enough to justify having their own tech tree. That way, stuff like the Polkweed jet or the Lynx tank could have somewhere to live without feeling like they were dumped into one of the existing nation's tech trees. I posted this suggestion on the Discord on Monday, the 18th. Here it is. And as you can see, it kind of went over like a lead balloon with all the other content creators. The discussion basically was that nobody liked the idea of having to grind out another tech tree, even if it was just one, and they just wanted vehicles to get thrown into the existing trees. Well, here we are. The very next day, Israel was announced as a playable faction with a small tech tree. Now, just to be clear, the timing is a coincidence. But the real point is that it seems like they've decided to go down a path of having a larger number of factions with tiny tech trees, instead of just one Rest of the World faction with a normal-sized, amalgamated tech tree. The addition of Israel kind of commits them to that direction, and, I'm not really happy about it. I think that one of three things will happen, and all of them are kind of shitty. First, we'll get a small tech tree for a country, for example India, added into the game with barely 10 vehicles in it, if even that many. This will make it incredibly unexciting to play that faction, and it'll be overlooked. This will be especially problematic in game modes like Air Arcade or Ground RB, where you can potentially bring out a whole lineup of vehicles in the same match. To say nothing of the fact that if a tech tree, like Israel, doesn't have any ground vehicles in it, you're never going to get the chance to use those planes as close air support, so that kind of sucks. Option 2, we'd get those vehicles, but they'd get shoehorned into one of the other tech trees, the way that South Africa got absorbed into the British tree. For the love of Zeus, Gaijin, do not add India to the British tree. I hope I don't have to explain why. Option 3, we just never get to see those wonderful vehicles added into the game, and that's big missed opportunity. So, I guess what I'm getting at is, if you ever get frustrated with one of those three scenarios playing out in the future, because that's probably what's going to happen, one or more of them, just please keep in the back of your mind that at least one person did suggest a fourth option through a semi-official channel, even if it ended up being a little bit too late. I'm not trying to be all smug and self-righteous, but I really do think that a Rest of the World faction would have been an elegant solution, and sadly, it looks like we'll never see it because they've committed hard, going the other way. Now for something I'm pretty happy about. I started playing War Thunder way back in the day, I think somewhere around 2013 or 2012 maybe, back when battle rating wasn't really a thing and there were 20 ranks of aircraft. Ground vehicles hadn't even been added in yet. I remember how I grinded for months to get my first jet and how let down I was when the Yak 15P ended out really sucking pretty bad. Ah, the memories. Anyway, what I'm happy about is that the game has not stagnated. We've continued to see newer modern content get added in at a surprisingly fast rate. I honestly never thought War Thunder would have supersonic jets, but here we are with F-4 Phantoms and MiG-23s. Just awesome. My hope is that before we get too far into like 4th generation fighters and stuff, that we'll get a chance to flesh out some of the earlier jet tiers a little more. I'd really love to see more stuff like the F-101 Voodoo, the F-94 Starfire, the 1950s Su-11, the Chinese J-8, or the CF-100 Canuck, or maybe like the Fauga Magister get added in before we get the F-14s and the MiG-29s. I really love the early Cold War era, jet aviation, and War Thunder has potential to do great things with some of those vehicles. I guess we'll see. Oh, and please add in the K5 and AIM-4 missiles, please. So, digging holes. In the next update, War Thunder is going full-on farm simulator, with tanks plowing the field and Brits getting farm tractors and SPAA. I'm neither excited nor angsty about this new feature. I am worried, though. At a quick glance, it seems like they're using a voxel terrain-changing algorithm to do this. I worry because another game that I love, called Subnautica, originally used voxel terrain generation to allow a degree of player terrain alterations. The problem is, it's incredibly compute-intensive, so, it really crippled the console ports of the game, so they had to scrap the idea in development. As much as I love dunking on console players, all in good fun, of course, I'd hate to see their performance go into the outhouse for a feature like this, and since there's really no console port of the dev server, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. Also, taking Vegas odds on how long it takes before every match ends with people drawing genitals in the dirt. Next up, everyone's favorite topic, BR compression. Now, I'm not going to say what you might expect. Yes, everyone knows that it's a serious balance problem for, barely transonic jet fighters to get tiered into Mach 2 missile combat, or for an F-86 to get tiered down into high-end props, but I've got a different angle. The BR ratings of the ground and air trees are out of sync chronologically. Now, I know that we've got a lot of situations where vehicles from different decades, like air vehicles or ground vehicles, are ranked together for balance reasons. But we've got basic subsonic gunfighter-type jets from the early 1950s going up against radar-guided SPAA at the same battle rating if you take them out as close air support. To me, that's a huge problem, and it really takes away from the gameplay. If and when the battle rating compression issue is reworked, I really hope they stretch things out in such a way that aircraft from the 1950s aren't ranked the same as surface-to-air missile systems from the 80s or 90s. Helicopters are in a similar position, with tanks from the early 1960s up against advanced attack helicopters from the late 70s or early 80s. This creates a lot of ripple effect kind of problems. If you're excited for the potential future edition of the A-10 Warthog at some point, get ready for a letdown, because it's going to be squaring up against enemy air defense systems 40 years more modern than itself. Of course, the flip side of the coin is that if the battle ratings are stretched out too thin, we'll have 10-minute queues for a 3-minute match. I don't know the answer, but I hope that one is found eventually. Something I think is a really good development, though, is the continued development of helicopter gameplay. There's been consistent buzz from the developers about a PvE helicopter game mode coming at some point, and as recently as this week, they've confirmed it's still in development and hasn't been shelved. I'm really excited about that, and I think helicopters pretty often get overlooked in War Thunder. Now, next I want to talk for a minute about the Lovecraftian nightmare of air arcade battles at top tier. You've probably noticed that about 99% of my jet aircraft content is focused on realistic battles. Well, that's because Jet Arcade is an abject disaster. And it's a disaster for a couple of reasons. And if anyone from Gaijin is watching this, take notes please. First, there is a serious economic problem. The repair costs of vehicles don't get cheap enough where you can switch to arcade and compensate for the fact that you get punished exponentially harder for taking vehicles out if you can't consistently get kills in them. This makes stock grinds tremendously more difficult and expensive in arcade, and it makes it really hard to learn how to use new aircraft effectively if you just get swatted out in the first 10 seconds. This forces players into a very narrow meta if they want to make any Silver Lions. Having a lineup of, say, 5 aircraft can mean 5 repair bills, and if you don't get a significant number of kills, there's no way to make any income. This isn't rewarding success or, just punishing failure. It's just punishing everyone who's not, an S-tier jet ace, or punishing anyone who dares play in a stock plane that they haven't paid GEs to upgrade. If you get an unlucky match, or you're facing a squadron using Discord or something, and just get swatted out of the air within 5 seconds of spawning, there isn't really any point to even join the battle. The second problem is, frankly, cheaters. Now, this is likely to get some pretty nasty flames in the comment section, so get a hazmat suit on before you scroll down, but Air Arcade has a serious problem with cheaters. Now, in fact, there are a few semi-well-known player squadrons who engage in pretty widespread cheating, or at best, they tolerate widespread cheating in their ranks. There's another guy here on YouTube who, he's got an entire channel dedicated to exposing those guys, so I don't spend any time on it. But I've personally submitted replays with really obvious cheating to Gaijin and complained, but nothing gets done. Now, I'm not talking about, oh, sounds like a skill issue type of things where someone's salty about getting shot down. I'm talking about seeing players get kills with an AIM-9B from 7 kilometers away in a tail chase, multiple times. Players with their afterburner on for the entire mission, which isn't normally possible in arcade battles, and players repeatedly getting pilot snipes on the first shot from 2 or 3 kilometers away. A couple of years ago, I even saw a guy in a replay shooting his guns non-stop without his ammo going down, but it's hard to know if that was actual cheating or just the replay being flaky. Now, I'm sorry folks, there's luck, there's you and me sucking, there's bugs, and then there's obvious cheating. I don't know the minutia of how the easy anti-cheat client works, that's used for ground RB, but either it doesn't get loaded at all for arcade battles, or players have defeated it. I'm not sure why the issue isn't addressed more forcibly by Gaijin, but it's a problem, and if you've ever wondered why the queues can be 20 minutes long for a top-tier air arcade, it's because nobody feels like draining their Silver Lions and getting swatted out by squadrons of cheaters. If any devs are watching, do something about this, please. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and I want to end this on a high note, is about bombers at higher tier. Right now, in Air Arcade or Air Realistic, taking out a jet bomber like the IL-28 or the Canberra is basically just begging for a repair bill more times than not. I think Gaijin realizes that, and in the current game modes, adding in more modern bombers like the B-47 or Tu-16 would be kind of pointless. The bomb load is so high that if just one of them survived the initial flyout, it could absolutely obliterate everything on the ground all by itself. At the same time, it would almost certainly be tiered into missile thunder, so, those players and bombers would stand a very strong chance of just getting smacked down before they even dropped a single bomb. The answer to this, in my opinion, is not just to add bigger maps. To me, the answer is, or at least includes, semi-randomized spawn locations and strategic bombing target locations. Right now, in Air RB, for example, everyone knows where the bombers spawn, at what altitude, and what direction they're going to go generally, and anyone who cares to figure out the right climb angle profile can intercept them pretty much with impunity on any of the current maps. The strategic targets are in the same places on the map, which makes the bomber flight profiles incredibly predictable. Now, if the maps were a little bit bigger, and people didn't know exactly where the bombers would be coming from and where they'd be flying to, it would add a serious element of challenge into intercepting them. It would also make radar much more useful, and it would make bomber escorts relevant, as well as give the bombers themselves a faint glimmer of hope that they might live long enough to drop even just 1 or 2 bombs. This could even get creative. For example, like a naval coastline map where one side has aircraft carriers and a flotilla to protect, and the other has like shore-based airfields to protect, with the bombers coming in from, more than one possible spawn location and altitude, either at random or, maybe chosen by the players who spawn in. Something like that would also give an opportunity to add like anti-ship missiles into the game and have them useful. Anyway, this idea isn't perfect, but I think there is a solution. I'd really love if Gaijin could add like a refined game mode or some modifications to the existing game modes where more advanced bombers could be added. B-29s wouldn't just be a flying repair bill, and also, maybe couldn't win a match all by themselves. I don't think the answer is just to punish bomber players harder and harder with up tiers and repair bills. I really think some minor tweaks to where the bombers come from and where they're flying to could be a useful part of a larger solution. So, my ask is this. If you have solid suggestions for how to make more modern bombers useful in the game, please post a comment. I'm not looking for just tweaks about, like, shift the repair bills down 20% or something, but outside-the-box thinking, like the random spawn points thing. I'm going to watch the comments on this video, and maybe a month or 2 from now, I'm going to use my content creator partner program contacts to submit a more detailed and developed proposal for making bomber gameplay viable again. No one person has the answers, and that includes me. So I'd love to include some of your ideas when I eventually submit a write-up. And when I eventually do, I'll probably do a video about it. So give it some thought, and make sure to get the hazmat suit on for all the people who are going to go super toxic in the comments because I talked about cheaters. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I promise this will be the last video like this for quite some time, and I'll do my best to keep things positive. As always, thanks for watching.